What would you do if the woman scrubbing your floors turned out to be the only person who could unlock your child's mind? When a wealthy tech executive discovers her autistic son is suddenly speaking in French, after 2 years of silence, she storms into the room, only to find the maid calmly teaching him 9 languages. But this cleaning lady isn't who she seems, and what happens next will shake the walls of privilege, power, and perception. This is the story of one whisper that changed everything. The sunlight poured through the oversized windows of the Carrington estate, a $40 million tech fortress in the hills of Santa Barbara. The marble floors gleamed. Everything was calculated perfection, until the silence broke. "Excuse me," a sharp voice rang through the entryway. "Can you explain why you're speaking to my son?" Evelyn Carrington, 39, CEO of Novagen Biotech, stood rigid in her designer heels, arms crossed. Her tailored ivory suit reflected the kind of power you couldn't fake and didn't forgive. Across the foyer, a black woman in a navy blue cleaning apron sat on the floor beside a small boy flipping through a picture book. Calmly, she stood up and adjusted her mop bucket. "My apologies, ma'am. I was just—" "You were just what?" Evelyn snapped, her voice echoing. The boy, 7-year-old Lucas Carrington, didn't even flinch. His blue eyes stared at the illustrations in his lap with unusual focus. He hadn't spoken a single word in 2 years, not to therapists, not to family, not to his mother. And yet, the maid, this woman Evelyn had barely noticed in 3 months, was calmly chatting with him like they were old friends. What Evelyn didn't know was that this maid had once been Dr. Naomi Fields, a respected professor of linguistics at UCLA. That is, before her mother fell terminally ill and Naomi was forced to leave everything behind to survive, trading academic prestige for minimum wage and invisibility. Lucas was flipping through a children's book, in Italian. Evelyn's face darkened. "Where did that come from?" she demanded. "From the library," Naomi answered evenly. "I was reorganizing. And you thought it was appropriate to, what? Run experiments on my son?" Naomi said nothing. The truth? She'd noticed Lucas react to her humming in different languages. Spanish, French, Mandarin. She'd whispered to herself while she worked. It soothed her, but it ignited something in him. Until, yesterday, he whispered one soft word while she was wiping the windows. "Bonjour." Evelyn scoffed. "Lucas has severe autism. 3 specialists confirmed it. He doesn't interact. He doesn't learn. And now you're here filling his head with what, exactly?" Naomi looked at Lucas, whose eyes flicked toward her with recognition. Not confusion. Not fear. Recognition. "Sometimes children," she said gently, "just need to be heard, in a language that makes sense to them." Before Evelyn could cut her off, Lucas turned his head and softly whispered, "Merci, madam." The room froze. Evelyn's mouth parted, but no sound came. Her son, who hadn't spoken in 2 years, just addressed the cleaning lady. In French. The marble floor might as well have cracked beneath Evelyn's heels. Her son, Lucas, had spoken. Not babbled. Not made a sound. Spoken. In French. But denial is a powerful thing. And Evelyn Carrington had built her entire empire by controlling what others called chaos. She wasn't about to let a cleaning lady undo that control in 30 seconds. "That doesn't mean anything," she finally snapped, snatching the book from Lucas's hands. "He makes noises. Random ones. He has for years." Naomi stood quietly, her hands folded in front of her apron. She didn't respond. "I want you to stay away from him. No more interaction." "None," Evelyn continued, already stepping back into her CEO persona. "From now on, you'll be assigned to the service wing only. Sandra, the housekeeper, will cover all child-accessible areas." Naomi simply nodded. "Understood, ma'am." But her heart burned. Not with anger. With recognition. She had seen that same defeated look in the eyes of over 40 children she once worked with, kids dismissed by society, misdiagnosed by overconfident doctors, forgotten by the very people who loved them most. Lucas wasn't broken. He was waiting. Waiting for someone to speak the language his mind understood. Later that day, as Naomi organized supplies in the basement, she heard the soft click of footsteps descending the stairs. It wasn't Sandra. It was Dr. Henry Lynn, the family's private pediatrician. He looked uneasy. "Sorry to disturb," he said in a low voice, checking to make sure they were alone. "I need to speak with you." "About Lucas." Naomi straightened. "Is something wrong?" "Quite the opposite," he replied, folding his arms. "I heard what happened this morning. I also reviewed the security footage." Naomi blinked. Dr. Lin continued, "That was no random noise. That was intentional, contextually appropriate, and, if I may, remarkable. He took a breath. Do you have any experience in special education? For a moment, Naomi hesitated. Revealing her past could change everything, or ruin what little trust she had. I do, she said. I hold a PhD in applied linguistics from UCLA. I specialized in cognitive development and multilingualism in neurodivergent children. I've published 17 peer-reviewed studies. Dr. Lin stared at her. You're telling me you're a doctor? She nodded. Yes, sir. He sat down on a storage bin, stunned. What on earth are you doing cleaning houses? Naomi gave a sad smile. Life happens. I lost my university position after taking too much time off to care for my mother when she got sick. I needed income. This was the first job that said yes. Dr. Lin leaned forward. And Lucas? I don't think I can help him, she said softly. I know I can. He doesn't have classic autism. He has selective mutism triggered by trauma and emotional disconnect. Dr. Lin was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, he pulled a business card from his pocket. If you're willing to help this boy, he said, I'll make sure you have medical clearance and support. But it has to be discreet. Naomi held the card, her fingers trembling slightly. A door had just opened. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills of Santa Barbara, Naomi stood in the quiet of the basement holding Dr. Lin's card like it was a lifeline. Her breath caught in her throat, not out of fear, but for the first time in a year, hope. She hadn't felt this version of herself, Dr. Naomi Fields, in a long time. She pulled out her old flip phone, the same one she hadn't dared to use for anything academic since her fall from grace. With trembling fingers, she dialed a number burned into memory. UCLA Linguistics Department, answered a warm voice. Professor Williams? It's Naomi. Naomi Fields. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, Naomi? Where have you been? Your name's come up in 3 journals this semester. Harvard's been trying to contact you. Your work's being cited everywhere. I'm in a transitional phase, Naomi replied, forcing a dry chuckle. I need a favor. I need access to my research files, especially the selective mutism intervention protocols. You got it, the professor replied immediately. I'll send everything tonight, discreetly. Naomi hung up with tears in her eyes. She wasn't just a maid. She never had been. And now she had a chance to prove it, not with words, but with results. Upstairs, in the golden-lit living room, Lucas was alone. He had found a book Naomi had accidentally left under his bed, a children's encyclopedia with animals listed in 6 languages. He whispered to himself, the words soft but sure. Dog, chien, parrot, cane. Each name rolled off his tongue like poetry. No one heard him. No one except Sandra. The housekeeper had paused outside the doorway, tray in hand, just in time to catch the words, and more importantly, the boy's smile. Later that night, while Victoria Carrington sipped wine and laughed with board members at the country club, Sandra was eavesdropping again. This time, outside the basement door. Naomi was on another call, her voice calm but resolute. Yes, I need the files from my thesis. And the case studies on early language mapping. Sandra's eyes narrowed. Doctor? Files? Research? By morning, the gears of betrayal were already turning. And Sandra, ever hungry for status, had what she thought was golden leverage. At 10 a.m. sharp, she marched into Victoria's office, her face a mix of concern and smug satisfaction. Miss Carrington, she said, practically whispering, I think you should know something about the maid. Victoria barely looked up. What now, Sandra? She was on the phone last night, talking about scientific journals, universities, and she said she's a doctor. Victoria's brows furrowed. A doctor, she repeated. Yes. She even mentioned she worked with children like Lucas, 43 of them. Victoria slowly set down her coffee mug. A maid with a PhD? A maid who had gotten her silent son to speak? The pieces were clicking into place, and it terrified her. Bring her to me, Victoria said coldly. 15 minutes later, Naomi was called into Victoria's office, a sun-drenched, high-ceilinged chamber where power had a smell, leather, glass cleaner, and fresh-cut flowers no one ever touched. She stepped inside quietly, her uniform spotless, her face unreadable. Victoria stood behind her desk like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. Her silver laptop was open, its screen facing Naomi. Sit, she said curtly. Naomi obeyed. You lied to me, Victoria began, sliding the laptop toward her. On the screen, Columbia University's official faculty archive. Right there, in bold letters and a crisp headshot, Dr. Naomi Fields, Ph.D. in Applied Linguistics, former associate professor, expert in cognitive development and multilingualism in neurodivergent children. Below the profile, 17 peer-reviewed publications, several international awards, and a glowing professional record. I never lied, Naomi replied calmly. I just didn't volunteer information that no one cared to ask for. Don't play word games with me. Victoria snapped, slamming her palm on the table. You let me believe you were just some uneducated woman scrubbing baseboards. Naomi didn't flinch. Why would that matter? You made it very clear from day one that my role here was to be invisible, to clean, to stay quiet. My degree wouldn't have changed that. In fact, it would have made things worse, wouldn't it? Victoria recoiled slightly. I trusted you with my son, she hissed. No, Naomi corrected gently. You ignored me. Your son found me. That's when the door burst open. Naomi. Lucas sprinted in, his face bright and animated. His words tumbled out in perfect Portuguese. Eu aprendi novas palavras. Then he switched to French. Já apris un chanson. And finally Spanish. Puedes enseñar más palabras? Victoria was speechless. 2 months ago, Lucas had been nonverbal. Now, he was code-switching between languages like it was second nature. Dr. Henry Lin entered behind him, holding a tablet. Victoria, he said calmly, I need to show you something. He set the tablet on the desk and played a sequence of videos. Lucas counting to 10 in German. Lucas reciting the alphabet in Mandarin. Lucas singing a lullaby in Arabic. Every clip was time-stamped, recorded with medical supervision. In just 3 weeks, Dr. Lin explained, Lucas has demonstrated fluency in 7 languages. His cognitive ability is off the charts. What you assumed was severe autism was not. It was selective mutism caused by trauma and environmental disconnection. Victoria dropped into her chair. How is this possible? Naomi knelt beside Lucas, who now clutched her hand. It's not a miracle, she said. It's understanding. He's not broken. He just needed someone to speak his language. Lucas turned to his mother. For the first time in 2 years, he met her eyes and said in clear English, Mom, Miss Naomi says I'm smart. Then he added, in Italian, Mi ha insegnato com parlar per volevo. She taught me how to speak because I wanted to. Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. She had believed her son was unreachable, but now he was fluent. Victoria Carrington sat frozen, her hand still resting on the desk, as if letting go of it would collapse the entire world she'd constructed. Her son, Lucas, was speaking. Not only speaking, but glowing. Animated. Fluent in 3 languages in under a minute. The boy she'd protected like fragile glass was suddenly standing tall. Victoria stammered. I don't know what to say. Naomi gently squeezed Lucas's hand and rose to her feet. You don't have to say anything right now, she said gently. But eventually, you'll have to decide what to do with what you now know. Dr. Lin cleared his throat and stepped forward. Victoria, interrupting this process now would be devastating for Lucas. What Naomi has done, what Lucas has accomplished, is something 3 years of private therapy never achieved. Victoria blinked, her gaze darting between the two of them. Then, finally, her voice cracked. I owe you both an apology. She stood slowly, took a deep breath, and looked at Naomi. I judged you the second I saw you in that uniform. I assumed that because you cleaned my house, you had nothing to offer my son. I was wrong. Naomi didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply nodded, accepting the apology without rubbing salt into it. I need to ask you something, Victoria continued. Not as a boss, not even as a mother desperate for answers, but as someone who wants to make this right. Naomi's eyes softened. I want you to stay, Victoria said. Not as house staff, not as support, but as Lucas's teacher, his mentor, the person who gave me back my son. Naomi took a moment before responding. I'll stay on one condition. Anything. You don't call Lucas a miracle. And you don't call me a success story, she said firmly. Lucas is not a trophy. He's not here to prove something to the world. He's just a child, brilliant, yes, but one who deserves to be loved for who he is, not just what he can do. Victoria nodded. Her eyes misted. Agreed. At that moment, Lucas looked up, first at Naomi, then at his mother. He reached out and grabbed both their hands, one in each of his. Miss Naomi. Mom, he said, switching back to Portuguese. Somos uma família de verdade agora? Are we a real family now? Neither woman spoke. They didn't need to. In that sunlit room, where silence had once reigned, something more powerful than words settled over them. Connection. Not by blood, not by contract, but by understanding. And for the first time in years, Lucas laughed, full and free. Outside, birds chirped. Somewhere down the hall, a forgotten book on the animal kingdom lay open, its pages still brimming with translated names and playful illustrations. Inside, the boy who was once considered unreachable had built his first sentence of belonging. And in the space where hierarchy used to live, something new had taken root. Family. 6 months later, the Carrington mansion was unrecognizable. Once a cold, sterile display of wealth, it now buzzed with energy, bursts of laughter, the rustle of pages in different languages, the echo of Lucas's voice dancing through the marble halls. What had once been a place of silent suffering had become a home filled with life. "Mom," Lucas called from the garden, his sneakers kicking up grass. "I learned a new word in Swedish today, kärlek. It means love." Evelyn Carrington looked up from her laptop on the porch and smiled, a real smile, not the kind used in corporate press releases. "That's beautiful, baby. Where's Miss Naomi? She's recording the next episode." Lucas shouted in Spanish. Hoy tenemos muchos estudiantes nuevos. Today we have many new students. The YouTube channel, Learning with Lucas, had become a global phenomenon. In just 4 months, over 2 million subscribers tuned in weekly to watch Dr. Naomi Fields teach language acquisition methods for neurodivergent children, with Lucas as her bright, articulate co-host. His story had inspired millions. The revenue from the channel and sponsorships had raised over $500,000 for the newly founded Carrington Fields Institute for Neurodivergent Learning, an initiative created by Evelyn herself. The woman who once hid her son from the world was now an outspoken advocate for inclusive education. Meanwhile, Naomi, no longer in an apron but now in professional dress Evelyn insisted on gifting her, had received tenure offers from Harvard, Stanford, and Columbia. Her upcoming book, The Language of the Heart, was already a bestseller before its official release. "Dr. Fields," Evelyn said one afternoon, addressing Naomi with full respect, "we've had 5 more school districts request your learning method." Naomi smiled as she organized flashcards for their next shoot. 15 schools in 6 months. "I never imagined we'd reach so far, so fast." "And Sandra?" Evelyn asked, referring to the former housekeeper who had tried to sabotage Naomi. "Last I heard, still looking for work," Naomi replied with a shrug. "Seems families don't want someone who spreads rumors on social media. Karma has its own way." Dr. Lin joined them on the porch, briefcase in hand. "Ladies, good news. Your article was just accepted by Nature Neuroscience, and the American Pediatric Association wants you to present at the national conference." Evelyn looked out at her son, now chatting fluently in German with the gardener. "You know what amazes me most?" she whispered. "It's not the languages, or the success. It's that for the first time in his life, Lucas is happy." Naomi nodded. "Children like Lucas don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood." That evening, over dinner, Lucas stood proudly with a folded paper in his hand. "Mom? Miss Naomi? I wrote a letter. Can I read it?" They nodded. "Dear Mom and Miss Naomi," he began, voice clear and confident. "Before, I felt like I was trapped in a glass box. I could see the world, but no one could hear me. Miss Naomi didn't break the box. She showed me there was never a box at all. And Mom, thank you for letting her." 3 months later, Naomi stood on stage at the International Special Education Conference in Chicago. 5,000 educators watched in awe as Lucas Carrington, now 8, stood beside her and declared, "My name is Lucas. Doctors once said I'd never speak. Today, I speak 9 languages because someone believed I could." The crowd rose in thunderous applause, not because they saw a miracle, but because they saw proof that every child has a voice. All it takes is someone willing to listen. This story isn't just about a boy who learned to speak 9 languages. It's about the voices we overlook, the talents we underestimate, and the brilliance that lives behind the labels society gives far too quickly. Lucas didn't need fixing. He needed someone to believe in him. And Dr. Naomi Fields didn't demand recognition. She simply created space for someone else to shine. In a world that moves too fast to listen, this story reminds us of a simple but powerful truth. Potential is everywhere. But recognition? That's a choice. Imagine how many children, how many adults, go unnoticed, simply because no one looked twice. Imagine how many lives could change if we just stopped, listened, and saw people for who they truly are. If this story moved you, if it made you reflect, if it made you wonder who you might be overlooking in your own life, hit the subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to be seen. Leave a comment. What does being understood mean to you? Let's fill this space with voices that deserve to be heard. Because sometimes, the most life-changing revolution doesn't come with noise. It begins with a whisper and someone who finally chooses to listen. Welcome to the community where stories have power. And yours might be next.